Okay, we are live. Hello, Ivo. Hello to Georgia. I'm in Sweden. How are things in Tbilisi?
Yeah, opening up finally. We had some crazy time, I guess, like everyone else. But so this week they finally opened up the city. We can leave the city. Tomorrow I'm going to see our farm. Small shops are opening at last. So yeah, things are finally looking like normal again. And I mean, I can see you like me live like a hermit, growing your hair, and yeah, it was strange times for me.
Yeah, I think last time at a haircut I was from me in August before my birthday, even after we went to Georgia. So
Yeah, I think
probably,
I'm
right?
pretty much in the same boat there. I don't know, I mean, it's you kind of live like a hobo again, and I don't know. We're all kind of becoming primitive people again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, at least I can travel around a bit in Sweden. Yeah, you're a bit more locked down in Georgia, I guess, but nevertheless, still an amazing country, and that's what we are talking about today. So, who doesn't know Ivo? Ivo and me are business partners. You might have heard of the walnut plantation. And Ivo also basically helps people opening bank accounts in Georgia, helping them to get residency, forming companies, and everything else which is basically possible in Georgia. And today we wanted to speak a bit about the current opportunities in Georgia, also a bit about the issues many people have with banking in the last couple of weeks. So we want to give you an up-to-date insight what's possible in Georgia. And I'm happy to have Ivo here and let him speak a little bit about everything.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks, Christoph, for the intro. As he already said, you know, I run the operations here for Staatenlos, and myself moved to Georgia about 3 years ago. Basically, was very interested. You know, I'm mainly a macro guy. I looked at the numbers from outside, and it sounded like a place that you should have a look at. And to be honest, when I came here, I was pretty much hooked from the very beginning. Particularly, you know, because I was moving here, came to Tbilisi, and it's a really nice city. You know, feels a lot like Berlin that I grew up with in the 90s. Lots of concrete and socialist charm, but at the same time, you know, you have all these people taking advantage of the spaces and you know, turning it into these kind of industrial hipster playgrounds. So that got me hooked on one hand, and on the other hand, of course, you know, as a country that is very business friendly, has a fantastic tax system, which I'll go a bit into a bit later. And yeah, that, you know, that was basically it for me to make a decision. And 3 years now that I'm living here, I haven't planned that. You know, I've founded several companies. You know, with Christoph, we have the largest walnut plantation in the country. So things, you know, really go very easily here. Yeah. So basically, Georgia, you know, has seen some tremendous changes over the last couple of years. On one hand, of course, because it's moved more and more into the spotlight of the international scene, but as well because of its business friendliness. You've seen tourism rates grow extremely fast, like 20% year on year over the last 3 years in a row. And, you know, many more young digital nomads, but also you know, other entrepreneurs, you know, start to notice the country. And today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the how the setups work here and what you can do. So briefly, you know, of course, one of the main reasons why Georgia is gathering so much attention is the low cost of living. that allow you basically, you know, to live a crazy life in comparison. Not to lose much of the Western standards that people know, but, you know, at the same time lower your cost base to probably a third or even a fourth. Just, you know, as an example, going to the best restaurants, you probably end up paying 20 euros for a full meal and more wine than you possibly imagine. Or, you know, in apartments, you know, like my apartment, for example, I have, you know, 200 square meters and that I pay, I think, around 700 euros a month. So these things, you know, are possible here, and people are usually stunned by how cheap of a place can be. Even, you know, friends I have that come over from Asia or other places in Eastern Europe, I remember my friend Andreas was here last year, and he lives in Montenegro and couldn't believe how crazily cheap everything is. Other than that, there's a vibrant tech scene, which people, you know, have gathered interest, like started growing music scene, when it comes especially to electronic music. So it's certainly a place, you know, for the younger crowds, you can definitely, you know, have a lot of fun. At the same time, you know, there's some really impressive nature surrounding you. You have the Caucasus Mountains. In like 2 hours, you can be in Gudauri, in the ski resort. In 3 to 4 hours, you're at the Black Sea coast, or you are in a subtropical zone in Lago Dehi in 2 hours. So you have really a wide array of opportunities when it comes to enjoying nature here. And many of these areas are just not explored or underdeveloped, so you can just go, you know, into the forest or the national parks and just be there on your own. So definitely, that's one of the fantastic things here. Then of course, there's not everything is great here. So I wanted to also, you know, probably give you some ideas about what are the things that after living here for 3 years, you know, kind of really annoy me. I think the biggest issue of all is transportation. Georgia is like really terribly connected to the rest of the world. You know, you have few low-cost carriers that mainly fly from the center of the country, so you have to always, you know, move to Kutaisi, which is a 3-hour ride with the car. You know, that's flights are usually in the night. So if you have to move out of the country often, then that can be kind of a nuisance. And the other thing that you know is very annoying here is basically the pollution and the traffic. Right now, thanks to the corona, it's a little bit, you know, slowed down, but overall, you know, you go crazy here if you have to commute during normal business hours, because the city is just so packed with cars. It's getting better because there's some policy changes regarding, you know, car regulation, but overall that's quite annoying. Basically here forgot to click on these things, that's basically about Georgia. As I said, you know, the country is rather cheap, and that's also what's becoming very interesting when we're looking at the substance. I'll just jump right ahead into the business situation here. Georgia has, you know, gained a lot of international respect for its business friendliness. That is because the country, since the Saakashvili took power in 2002, has really turned itself into a very liberal economy. For example, you know, it's very, very easy to register a company here. You can register a company in one day. There are no requirements to share capital. Non-residents can be shareholders or directors. There are no substance requirements at all when it comes to running a company. So this is extremely easy to incorporate here. I think it's number 2 in the world when it comes to the easiness of incorporating a business. There are actually only 6 taxes in Georgia. There is a corporate profit tax, which is 15%, and however, what's important there is that the corporate profits are only taxed if they are distributed. So retained corporate profits are untaxed. This is the so-called Estonian model, which basically allows you, to not pay any taxes at all until you can afford it to do so. So this is a very, very important factor in the Georgian business structures. Then after corporate profit tax, you have the VAT, which is 18%. Then personal income tax with 20%. But there are quite a few exceptions, which we go into a little later. Dividend tax, dividend interest, and royalties are all taxed at 5%. Although there are a lot of exceptions when it comes to, for instance, publicly traded companies. They are basically not any income from those companies is not taxed. Yet, despite all these very favorable conditions, Georgia is not considered an offshore destination, and that's why it's very uncomplicated to invoice. If you have clients in high tax countries using a Georgian structure, because again, Georgia is not an offshore destination. There are no real substance requirements, as I said before, but yet if you really need to build substance, it's very easy just because the costs are so low. Like right now, we are here in our offices, Staatenlos offices, and we have a huge 300 square meter office, which cost I think around $1,300. You can rent an small office for $200. You can find employees here, simple employees, English-speaking employees, for as low as $250 a month. So, if you want to build substance in Georgia, it's fairly uncomplicated. The country has 55 tax treaties, among that with the EU and with the CIS countries. There's been plans to establish the tax treaty with the US for basically ever since I've been around, and I don't know if they ever finalized them, but it has 55 active tax treaties, which can be used for advantages, in particular if you are an EU citizen. Right. So let's look at the different options that we have here for people to incorporate businesses. The most common of them is the limited liability company. Again, as I said, 15% corporate income tax. Businesses are taxed on their worldwide income, and those taxes only apply though when the profits are distributed. There are monthly tax reporting requirements. That's kind of a bit of a pain in the ass here. You have to report monthly. So accounting is really one of the downsides here in Georgia. It's taken quite seriously. VAT registration is mandatory when you have more than 100,000 over 100,000 GEL turnover. Again, actually very, very nice, very favorable conditions. If you're a small guy, you can have up to 100,000 GEL turnover, which equals around 30,000 euros per year, and you don't even have to charge any VAT. Salary taxes is 20%. And paid on the company level. So if you pay your employee, you actually end up paying 25% because it's paid on the company level. For Georgia, although there are no CFC rules, they have quite elaborate transfer pricing rules. So it's not always a good idea to use Georgia as a holding company for holding companies, because often if it depends on the use case, but often if you want to invest in your subsidiaries, then this was considered a profit distribution. Yeah. There are special tax regimes, quite a few for these companies. The most popular is the virtual zone company, which is basically any LLC or joint stock company that can apply for the status. And despite its name, which suggests it's kind of a special zone, what it actually is a special tax regime. It has nothing to do with the economic zone or free zone or something. Basically, what it says is that any company that is involved in the IT sector has their corporate income tax and their VAT waived. However, they have to deal on the international level, so they cannot deal with this tax incentive inside with Georgian partners. They can still work with other Georgian companies, but then their income is taxed the same way as any other company. We always get a lot of requests of these virtual zone companies because they're very popular. And I have to be clear that this is directed at IT companies. So IT companies, although the definition is rather broad in the Georgian legislation, it says anything that produces software. That doesn't mean that you can. People sometimes understand that anything that has to do with the internet can be an IT company, but there's certain limitations. Most commonly, we have drop shippers or FBA companies who would like to register as a virtual zone company, and that's not possible. Like typical examples are like an SEO company or an IT consultant, a developer. Those guys, they can register for this status and get this license. Then the other special tax incentive are the free zone companies. Georgia has this extremely open approach to free zones. Basically, anyone who owns a piece of at least 10 hectares of land can ask the government to come with the free zones there. The first ones who did that was the Tbilisi free zone, which was actually Bitfury back then among the top 10 Bitcoin miner companies in the world. They still are here in the Tbilisi free zone, although they're at the moment scaling back. But that was the original idea. Basically, the free zone companies, they can engage into any type of international business. Can be anything from export, manufacturing, but also can be service industry, consulting. They're not directly designed. They're more designed as an industrial zone, but the legislation does not limit anything. As a matter of fact, the only thing they limit in the legislation is that no weapons can be produced, no nuclear material or drugs. But everything else is kind of possible. As a free zone company, basically all your taxes are waived. You don't pay any corporate tax, you don't pay any withholding tax, you don't have to pay any VAT. Also, there's no monthly reporting requirements to the authorities. But the great thing is that the free zone companies are not considered an offshore company. Basically, if you look at a company extract of a free zone company, it just looks the exact same as any other LLC company. So there's really, it doesn't seem like it has benefits from all these special tax regimes. As opposed to the virtual zone where the license is granted for the lifetime of the company, the free zone has an annual license that it has to pay to the operators of the free zone. They can defer and cost, but more or less, the annual licensing costs are around 4,000 euros. Moving on, another very interesting setup is the so-called small business setup. It's not a company per se. Actually, what it is, it's rather a registration of an individual as an entrepreneur. So it's you yourself, your business representation of yourself. You're not a separate entity. Hence, you're also fully liable as an individual for the activities that you engage in. As a small business, you can engage into any activities that do not require licensing. Basically, that's very broad, and luckily, it also is that broad in the end. You know, you can be as a graphic designer or as an architect, you can work there. So licensing means basically certain type of activities, like a pilot, for example. The accountants, they cannot be cannot work as the small businesses, but most other service providers are able to work as a small business. Once you have the small business status, you are basically only paying 1% of your revenue in taxes, up to 500,000 GEL, which equals around 150,000 euros at the moment. And if you move above these 500,000 GEL, you're taxed at 3% of your revenue. However, this is something that you should not continuously do. You should try to keep it more or less at this 500,000 GEL. Otherwise, the revenue services might revoke that status. VAT registration, again, is also mandatory if you have more than 100,000 GEL per annum. Reverse charge applies, although at the moment there are some plans to EU harmonization of the VAT rules in 2021. There might be some changes coming up ahead. We're keeping an eye on, but as of right now, it's really uncomplicated to invoice clients from the EU with small business. Again, you have monthly reporting requirements. You basically report all the turnover you have achieved in a month. It's also very simple, and you can even have up to 5 employees that you employ in your small business. Right. Okay, so now we come to the interesting part, what actually led me here in Georgia, and this is the individual taxation. Basically, the personal income tax in Georgia is 20%. However, what makes it so interesting is the territoriality of the taxation system. So basically, only the taxes are only levied on income that is sourced in Georgia. So for many foreigners, that makes it possible to not pay taxes on their income in case they do not source their income in Georgia. What does that mean? That means basically any type of passive income is not taxed. This is what gathered my attention back then when I came here. Because, for example, it means that no trading on foreign stock exchanges, in derivatives, futures, options, or in forex is all not taxed on an individual level. And since last year, there has also been a note by the Revenue Services, which also stated that trading cryptocurrency is not income taxable and is also not VAT taxable. Therefore, also cryptocurrency trading is completely tax-free in Georgia. Also, you know, another way of applying the principle of territoriality is if you work as a contractor for a foreign company or a foreign project. Let's say you are a German architect building a skyscraper in Dubai, then and you're a tax resident of Georgia, then this is something that is not being taxed here. Yeah, so these are like examples. This is really what makes the country so interesting for people who do earn their income outside of Georgia. How can you become a tax resident? Well, the most common, the 183-day rule applies to Georgia too. So you have to live here in order to take advantage of the tax regime. There is some special conditions for the so-called high net worth individuals. If you can prove that you have earned more than 200,000 JL consecutively in the last 3 years, or you own more than 3 million JL in assets, and you are a resident of Georgia, we can just come to the point how to become a resident shortly, then you can apply for this special tax regime that gives you a tax certificate even though you have not lived here 183 days. That doesn't mean, you know, that you are unconditionally only a tax resident of Georgia. Could also mean you can easily become one somewhere else, but that's one way to become a tax resident without actually living here for 183 days. Other than that, the 183-day rule applies to Georgia. What's interesting though is that a tax certificate can be issued even to non-residents. So if you live in Georgia 183 days without being a resident, you can also apply for a tax certificate. It's also some interesting thing. Okay, let's look at the immigration. How can you immigrate to Georgia? For many countries, actually, 98 they enjoy visa-free travel to Georgia, and they can basically stay a whole year in Georgia without having to apply for a visa. And this timer resets every time you leave the country. So as long as you leave the country once every year, you can basically stay here infinitely without ever having to apply for the residency permit. There are some cases though where it's very useful to apply for a residency permit. Some countries, for example, require you to have a residency permit in order to get out of your own tax scheme in your home country, and in that case, it might be interesting to apply for the residency permit, or you are one of the individual citizen of the country that doesn't have this visa-free regime. In those cases, applying for the residency permit is the way to go. And there are basically 3 ways to get this residency permit, of which one is the most favorable one, and by far the one that we use the most. There's one, the short-term residency permit, which basically you can get by owning an apartment here. This is very straightforward, very simple. You have to invest into an apartment, which is valued at least $100,000. Doesn't mean you have to pay $100,000. You have to have an apartment which is valued $100,000. And then, as long as you own this apartment, you can basically get the residency card, residency permit here. This type of residency is issued for once a year, and you have to renew it every year by proving that you still own this apartment. But then you can basically stay here, you and including your family. Then there's the investment residency permit, which is issued to anyone who invests at least $300,000 into the economy. This is a very vague mean of obtaining it, because they don't really specify what it means to invest these $300,000. This has to be confirmed by some financial auditor, and then once you have the confirmation, you basically have this permit granted for 5 years. And every year you have to fulfill a certain turnover requirement in order to keep having this residency permit. After 5 years, then you can basically apply for the permanent residency. The numbers are $50,000 in the first year, and then up to $120,000 in the 5th year. And then the third option is the work residency permit, which is basically granted to any individual that is engaging in entrepreneurial activities. It's granted between 6 months and 1 year, and since last year they have made it a little bit more difficult for somebody to obtain it by introducing some minimum turnover requirements. Basically, you have to have at least $50,000 in turnover in order to obtain that permit. And it can be a bit tricky to get that, but nowadays, there's some unclarity between the revenue services and the immigration, how to prove that. By far, the easiest way is to be a small business and have the turnover tax at 1%, because that way there's a very easy way to prove your turnover. Yeah, basically that's it when it comes to immigration. It's very straightforward here actually to get that. Sometimes the immigration offices invite you to an interview where you have to kind of legitimize why you want to live in Georgia. But overall, especially when it comes to EU citizens, the process is super straightforward. And so far, at least, we've processed dozens of these residencies now, and we've never had a single case that was neglected. So actually, as long as you comply with these simple requirements, it's a very straightforward process. Okay, just wanted to sum up, a little bit for whom Georgia is an interesting place. And have an option. Some people have come here with the wrong expectations or with the right expectations. And just to set these things straight, basically, if you're looking at a place where you can leverage your own assets, then this is a great place, because you have a very low cost base. You can end up paying very little in taxes. That obviously gives you a lot of room to invest here or abroad as well. You can have an excellent life with 1,500 euros a month, which gives you a life like maybe $5,000 or in the Western world. From a tax perspective, it's the good place is if you earn your income abroad, obviously, or if you have passive income. So any pensioner, traders are obviously very favorite. Basically, that's the reason I ended up going here. Because it's very simple, very straightforward setup. You don't need any companies offshore or onshore or whatever. As a trader, you just go here and you trade and you're good. And that's what I loved so much about the place, and one of the reasons that I stayed here. From a company perspective, basically anyone to whom these things that I mentioned before apply. The free zone companies are very broad. You can use them in a very broad sense. Sometimes the problem is with the free zone companies is that because they are so uncontrolled, because you have so little reporting that you have to do to the tax authorities, you have so much freedom in how to operate, the banks obviously hate you here. So it's very tough to get a bank account in Georgia. It's not impossible, but I'd say for most people it's not possible. They end up running from one bank to another in order to fail. But we have certainly gotten the bank accounts for the free zone companies, but overall I would say it's something that is very unlikely. So you're kind of forced to look for banking options abroad. But if you are able to live with it, either because you are, for instance, dealing with cryptocurrency and you don't really need a bank, then you just need the shell of a company, or you can live with one of the countless options that now are in the fintech industry and work with them as your bank accounts, then you're good. Then these companies can give you immense flexibility in terms of how to work, and basically are being free of all taxes. Virtual zone companies obviously are in the same area. They are a bit easier to get the bank account because they don't operate in the free zone, and they have to at least report regularly to the tax authorities. Still, there's some banks are not the biggest fan of those because it generally has gotten, as Christoph initially mentioned, a little bit more difficult to deal with the banks in Georgia as of lately. But nevertheless, it's something you can deal with, and if you can prove to them that you are actually engaging into real business activities, then there is no problem. I have a virtual zone company that I've been using for for several years here without a problem. And I know I've heard bad things and people who have had problems with it, but generally I cannot agree with it. Although I must say, you know, once the banks make a decision here, it's kind of really hard to get out of it again. Although again, not impossible. We've been able to revert some of these decisions that the banks have taken as of lately. Yeah, I mean that's basically it in analyzing from when Georgia is attractive. And now I just wanted to give you a brief idea how we can help you with that. As Christoph already said, you know, we can help you with the incorporation here. We can analyze the situation or what the right structure is for you. If Georgia makes sense, if migrating to Georgia makes sense, or registering a business makes sense. We can provide you with tax or legal advice. I have very good contacts to the big four accounting companies here, which can help you, you know, really provide a very solid framework, even if you have to work on a large scale with international companies. I've had some great experience as of lately in working there. We can provide you with accounting or payroll services in German, in English, in Russian, in Spanish. Yeah, and we have a wide range of some, you know, employees here that can help you with that. Myself, I speak 3 languages, can welcome people in Spanish, English, or in German. We can help you with substance creation. It's something that we are kind of working on and improving right now. People, you know, more and more requests come for people who want to rent an office here, who need local managers, or who want to, you know, set up their business. We can help you find the right people, do a little bit of headhunting. It's something that I plan to improve much, but it's out there. We're ready to do it. There's some options for nominee services, which we can offer to people who are looking at some privacy, both for shareholders or directors. And last but not least, of course, investment planning. You know, I'm actively engaged here in investments. I have several investment companies. By far, the largest, of course, the before mentioned Walnut project, and there's our specialty is in agriculture here. We're looking now at other projects as well, though. Currently, almond plantation that we plan in 2 years, apple orchard that we are going probably to start by next year. Generally, agriculture, there's a reason why I'm doing it. It's just the sector alongside with the tourism are the main objectives for the government, and they're providing loads and loads of incentives there. When it comes to financing, you know, when it comes to getting grants, there are some really nice options right now, especially now with the Corona crisis, since Georgia has realized again that they're very dependent on agricultural imports. So this sector is going to see a lot of push in the near-term future, and yeah, there's something, you know, where we are ready to help you if there's some interest. Yeah, that's basically it. And of course, you're welcome to visit us here in our offices. Down here is our address. There's my email and my phone number. You can reach out to us if there are any questions, and we will be happy to help you.
Yeah, thank you, Ivo. Thanks for a nice presentation. Maybe can you tell a little bit more about banks, about the recent issues, and if we can still help with opening bank accounts?
Yeah, actually, sure, we can help you. Well, what happened basically is by the turn of the year, there were new regulations issued by the central bank, and Georgia, you know, as it's trying to comply more with the international AML and KYC procedures, they suddenly had this task, you know, to check up on all their non-resident clients. What happened is basically, since we are working particularly with the Bank of Georgia, and suddenly our bankers were flooded with requests from the fraud department, where they had to, inquire about certain clients, in particular, some clients affiliate with our company, and that just created such a mess, which the bank wasn't really able to handle, and resulted in total chaos. I was left in the dark for several weeks there, because they were kind of investigating potential anti-money laundering or whatnot, and they couldn't really tell me what was going on at first, and that was kind of weird. In the end, what it means now is Georgia is trying to comply more with international, money laundering things, and things that were super easy before are not as easy anymore. And the banks have realized that, and as a result of that, for instance, Solo is now requiring higher deposits in the beginning, because they cannot handle this flood of clients anymore that they used to handle. The other thing that has changed a little bit is their openness to Bitcoin. It's kind of, it's tougher when it comes to cashing out Bitcoin or crypto in general in Georgia. They're asking more questions, while before, Bitcoin was just commonly accepted here. It's still, it's not like it's not allowed. I've still received, payments from exchanges even recently. But there, especially, when you have, think of it from a risk perspective. You have a client who has 0 transactions, and then suddenly he gets $100,000 on his account from an exchange. Of course, that raises some questions, and that's something that has changed. I wouldn't say, like things are impossible. Things are going on as before. You can still open bank accounts. The banks, I've actually still have a very great experience with them. But things have gotten a little bit more difficult.
Can we still help to do it remotely? And what's like the minimum sum which you need to put on Solo, for example?
Yes, you can. We can open accounts remotely. I think it's what is it? Is it $10,000? I think you should put into like minimum deposit of $10,000, or have a recurring payment of $3,000 to $5,000 a month that the bank likes this year. Then for the wealth management, the conditions have stayed the same. It's $100,000 for the wealth management account. But we can open the account remotely. There's no problems with that. Actually, the requirements are the exact same when it comes to documentation. This is just that the KYC documents have changed a little bit. Strangely, there's some other questions on it, but in the end, the procedure ends up being more or less the same.
Okay, perfect. So maybe let's go on to some questions, but first a short notice to the audience. This is not the only webinar tonight. In just 15 minutes, we will continue with Montenegro, because a good friend of Ivo basically offers Montenegro services as well. And he will be in the webinar in around 15 minutes. We will start a new one, but it will be also live streamed. And then we will tell you a little bit more about Montenegro, which is another very interesting country in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Let's do some questions.
Sure.
That's a question. That's someone wanting to come, having a beer with you, Ivo, in summer when the borders are open. Do you have any knowledge about when Georgia is going to open up again?
Yes, I think by 1st of July, they're going to open international travels. So right now they're allowing travel between the regions is the first thing, and I think by the 1st of July they're going to allow international travel. That's what they're aiming for at least. And sure, I'm happy to I haven't had much chances to drink beers the last 2 months, so happy to make up for that during the summertime. Or coffee.
Okay, perfect. We have another nice question here. What's the English level in Georgia? Like bank personnel authorities, do they speak proper English, or is it that hard? And
yeah,
how is Georgian? Is it easy to learn?
Forget about Georgian. Like that's the first thing. It's such a tough language. It has no Indo-German roots, so the only words that really you can recognize are those that are taken from the few words that they have taken from Russian or from German. But overall, with the young people, the level of English is pretty good. With the older generation, not so much. So really depends on the generation that you're talking to. Younger people are often very eager to speak English and very happy to do so. But it's generation. Surprisingly, with German, with the older people, you can often have more luck talking German because there's a long history of German Georgian relationships. German used to be the most popular language among next to Russian during the Soviet time. So I was surprised by that. The first time I came here, that everyone around me was speaking German. Our partners who allegedly don't speak German, but they do actually speak German very well. But yeah, so I would say it's okay. It's not on the level with let's say Poland or something, or other countries in Eastern Europe, but it's pretty good. And then it depends on where you go. If you go into a random bank branch, you might have no luck. But if you go into the bank branches in the nicer neighborhoods or the private banking branches, then usually the people are trained to speak English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds very good. We have a question here, which I want to clarify as well, about the VAT. So if you sell to foreign customers, do you still need to charge Georgian VAT or not?
This depends on, obviously always depends on where the service is rendered. So if you sell to a non-resident inside Georgia, if this is where the service is delivered, then it's a VAT taxable service. But if you're deliver it to another EU country, for the time being, there's basically reverse charges apply, so you don't have to pay VAT in Georgia.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's like the usual system, but it depends also on the country, of course. If you sell goods to a EU country, then the European VAT will be charged, obviously.
Right.
Okay, what else do we have here? What about number of developers available in Georgia? Is it a good country to find developers?
Yeah, I always had the impression that it's so not so, but it's actually now, as of recently, I had 2 clients in the last few months before this Corona thing happened who went here and set up their tech companies, and they said they had very good experience in finding devs. So I must say I've changed my opinion about it, and our common friend that you thankfully introduced me to, David, he has a fantastic he says he has a fantastic been able to set up a fantastic company here, has loads of devs there. Several governmental incentives to promote the tech industry. There's a tech park, which is I can recommend everyone to go to when they are interested in doing some tech business in Georgia. You can happily contact me and I'll put you in touch with the guys there. It's basically located on the hill next to the city with pristine views, and you can have basically offices for free there in a really modern office. We're just helping one of our clients right now to relocate there. And so overall, actually it's pretty good. when it comes to developers, and also from a pricing level competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's one question about crypto. Well, basically you answered it already. It's hard to get like a bank account locally for the free zone, but obviously it's possible to open a bank account anywhere else in the world. Of course, you need to find like a crypto-friendly bank for that. But
Yeah.
it's perfectly possible, for example, using a Liechtenstein or Swiss bank with a Georgian company, for example.
Exactly. That's always an option. Of course, you need to bring the necessary capital for that. But again, as I said, if you are a crypto trader here, the great thing is you don't need a company. Unless you deal with with other guys together, you can trade your own account. I trade a lot of crypto again, and I hated the fact that I always had to go into these companies, in Belize, or create these unnecessary overhead for you in order to trade. While in Georgia, I can just open an account in my own name and trade it, and that's it. You don't have to have any complicated accounting or whatnot. Pay some fees to hold these companies. You just trade your own account, and that's the big advantage of being in Georgia as opposed to, I don't know, let's say Cyprus, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this comparison to Cyprus is good because you also mentioned the high net worth residency program where you basically don't need to stay all the time. You don't need to stay 6 months in order to get a tax residency certificate. And that has some advantages, for example, using double tax treaties and other things without really being there. And
yeah, well, I mean, you have to be careful there, of course, because of these tiebreaker rules. The Georgian tax residency might not be very strong if you are not here. If you just have this piece of paper.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't stay too long in other countries, don't fall into other tax residency requirements. That's for sure. So maybe one more question from Cornelius as to like perpetual traveler base, like without even getting residency in Georgia. Is it possible to get a tax ID? For example, if you just rent out a partner or something, do you get a tax ID or things like that?
Yes, it's possible. We actually have a lot of people coming. We found a very nice way of getting it done now, and it's a very we found a very good solution for it. And yes, it's possible to get it done. Yeah, in short, yes, it's possible.
Did you experience?
You can contact Cornelius, and I think we can find a solution. You don't need to buy real estate or I mean, it's buying real estate is obviously probably the best way of doing it, but there are other, let's say, more capital efficient solutions in getting it done.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have for 3 years now in Georgia. You have a lot of like accounts in the financial world. I think you know every broker in the world basically and have accounts there. So, did you ever have any problems with being Georgian resident? Did any bank or broker decline opening account because we were in Georgia, or is that not a deal in Georgia?
The pain in the ass in Georgia really is when it comes to that is getting this utility bill, because utility bills are not issued in the name of the renter, but in the name of the owner of the apartment. And at the same time, bank statements here don't print your address. So, it's super complicated to get these utility bills done. And I have found some solutions, but they require some big effort. Like, for instance, getting a letter from the revenue services, which basically is proving your resident or your actual address. But this is really what is the pain in the ass in Georgia, the utility bills or these kind of things. Other than that, I mean, I've had some brokers, Coinbase, for example, when it comes to crypto brokers, they don't offer you services in Georgia. But that being said, there's not so many limitations that I've encountered, especially when it comes to the futures market and the forex market. There, things are much easier. And crypto, because there the regulations are changing now, and those exchanges who kind of seem to take regulation more eagerly, they have had some issues. But I think Coinbase was the only exchange that didn't allow me to trade. Other than that, I've had no problems.
Okay, maybe one more question before we continue with Montenegro. How's the internet connection in Georgia? Speed and stability, costs, is it good?
Yeah, that's a good point. So it depends a little bit where you are. If you are in the old city, the connections are suboptimal. Like the Wi-Fi is maybe 20 Mbit, but like in the neighborhood where we're right now, I have a 100 Mbit connection at home. It's very stable, and even if you have these occasional once every 2 months power outs, so you get those every now and then, especially in summer. Then you have the mobile internet connection. The mobile internet is amazing. It's I can tell you, like, for instance, I have on the farm, I have super fast internet, faster than I had in Berlin. On the ski lift, I can make the video calls. Here in the city, I've had 100 Mbit download speed with my phone. So yes, the internet is just like in most other countries in Eastern Europe. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Ivo. Here are some more questions coming, but basically we discussed everything about that already. There is no capital gains tax. Basically, well, there's 5% capital gains tax on local Georgian sourced income, right? But basically everything you earn.
Yeah, it's 20% on capital gains, 5% on dividends, interests, and royalties. And oh, by the way, these 20% capital gains, they have a holding period of 2 years. So after 2 years, they don't apply either for anything, for property, for company shares, and so forth. But yeah,
you can sell property after 2 years tax free.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's nice. Not 10 years, just 2 years. And yeah, basically it's territorial, so that just applies to Georgian sourced income. Everything you trade on the broker in another country is capital gains tax free anyway. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, basically for everyone who just got into this webinar later, we basically discussed everything for business, for residency, how to immigrate, what the taxes are in the beginning. We have the recording available on YouTube, on Facebook. So just watch it again if you like. And we make a short break around 5 minutes, and then we start with the next webinar about Montenegro. Ivo will still be there, and we will tell you a bit more about
I have
Montenegro.
only 45 minutes left until the curfew starts, and I still have to get home. So
okay.
I'll
maybe just for
but give my regards.
Or you just try now? Okay, perfect.
All righty. Well, thank you very much for your attention. And if you come to Georgia, let me know. Visit us in our offices. Come see our walnut plantation, or just have a coffee with me.
Yeah, perfect. I'm happy to come in July as well when it's possible again.
Yeah. All right. Take it easy.